So Matt Dunn is a member of the Micah Theotokos community in Dayton and the Visitation Marianist State community. Matt has served on a variety of Marianist committees, including the LGBT issue team, the steering committee for the Marianist Social Justice Collaborative, and the leadership team of the MLC-NA. Matt has served on the Marianist Family Council of North America and was a U.S. delegate to the International Assembly in Peru in 2004. He is chair-elect of the MLC-NA and is the incoming chair of the Marianist Family Council of North America. So Matt has been busy. Matt's full-time work, and will be busy, and Brother Ray is going to keep him busy. Matt's full-time work is as manager of community programming for the Montgomery County, Ohio Department of Human Services.
And I have the pleasure of introducing Marg Van Herk-Parody, who specializes in working with congregations and organizations to clarify their mission and vision through the use of innovative and creative tools. Having worked extensively across North America, Marg specializes in facilitation, coaching, and mediation for groups and individuals. Marg's professional experience includes over 25 years in nonprofit organizations, universities, and a variety of church denominations and faith-based organizations, as well as 17 years in a leadership position. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Applied Social Science from Concordia University in Montreal, and is currently completing a Master's in Theological Studies at Conrad Grebel University College, affiliated with the University of Waterloo. She has also completed a certificate in conflict management and mediation, as well as a certificate in conflict management and congregational leadership with advanced standing from Conrad Grebel. Marg's work with clients is informed by respect, the valuing difference, and the sacredness of every individual. Listening beyond words to the whole person is a cornerstone of Marg's practice. She believes that listening well and helping people know that they are loved can be transforming. She offers a hand of compassion and humility to those with whom she works. And so it's our pleasure to welcome to the stage Marg and Matt.
So good afternoon. So Caitlin gave you the backstory of how we were brought together to do this keynote in tandem. What she didn't tell you is that we both have the full 75 minutes each. So, so you'll be here until dinner, but not really. To set the framework for our time together, we did agree to do this presentation together based on our own involvement in the Marianist movement. Through our own stories and the changes that have been experienced in the lay network of North America, we hope to illustrate the passion, vision, and commitment necessary to say yes to the Marianist charism, as well as to provide some thoughts on where we should go from here. We are all passionate about the Marianist charism and are committed to it, or we wouldn't be here. My own story starts when I was a student here. I had come to UD knowing it was Catholic, but not knowing who the Marianists were. In my early years on campus, I had met several brothers and was impressed by them. I felt the ones I knew genuinely cared about me. But my real journey began in the second semester of my junior year. I had been active in campus ministry. I attended Mass daily. Following one of those Masses, Father Jim Heft invited me over to the Brothers' house for Mass and dinner. And over time, I was encouraged to consider a religious vocation. This was the sign I needed, because the reason I chose a Catholic university is because my parents had discouraged me from going to seminary right out of high school. Wisely, they had said, if this is really a vocation from God, it will still be with you in 4 years. Over several years of formation, learning and growing in the Marianist charism, and having built multiple relationships, I came to know and love myself and understand myself in the image and likeness of God. And this was the first time since my childhood that I had felt this. In my teens and in college, as religious as I was, I questioned whether God loved me and if there was a place for me in the church. I'm sure others, for whatever reasons, have felt the same way. If not about God, then probably about the church. I'm sure some of us have heard or even used the phrase, I feel more Marianist than I do Catholic. I used to feel that way until I realized that being Marianist was being Catholic, is being Catholic. We talk about the charism as a gift for the church and the world, but for us, it's also very personal. We draw strength, inspiration, and support from the charism and from our relationships in the Marianist family. The Marianist family is definitely a place I have been loved, welcomed, and accepted. When I left community, I detached from the Marianist family for a period of time. I became employed in a parish setting, and after several years in that ministry, I found that while I was busy tending to the spiritual needs of other people, I was ignoring my own. Through a Facebook conversation, of all things, I was communicating with a friend and lay Marianist who invited me to a picnic at her house that her lay community was having, and I've been a member of that community ever since. I jumped right back into Marianist life. I got involved right away with the Marianist Social Justice Collaborative, attended the 2010 assembly, did all the things that Caitlin mentioned, and obviously I'm standing here before you today as the next chair of our lay association, the Marianist Lay Community of North America. I say all of this not to brag about myself, but to share that my story involved others being encouraging, and it involved intentionality on my part to put my faith into action in service to the Marianist family, the church, and the world. I'm sure we all have our stories of how we met the Marianists and why we've stayed engaged. I'm sure we can all talk about the committees we've been on, the time zones we've had to accommodate, the activities we've participated in, the programs we were a part of, and also why we're here this weekend, probably using our vacation time and personal resources to be here instead of on a cruise ship or at Disney World. The fact that you're here is significant. The fact that we're all here is significant, and I want to thank you for your presence. I also want to thank our brothers and sisters who are with us this weekend, because we are all in this together. Our personal stories are part of a larger story, an unfinished story, as Sister Ilya reminded us on Thursday. And while we must look to the future of our own stories and our Marianist story, we should remember how we've gotten where we are.
Our Marianist story was founded on inspiration, addressing the chaos in society and in the church, and creating a new way forward, a plan of hope and restoration. Sound familiar? The inspiration for Chaminade came out of Mary's mission of bringing Christ into the world. He began his mission through witness and invitation. The story of my meeting the Marianists began in Montreal. I was a student who had just left the L'Arche community to study. I got introduced to a woman by the name of Leanne. I had no idea where she was from, but I was curious. We encountered each other a couple of times at the Miguel Newman Center, and each time we had a little bit longer of a conversation, and I remained curious. Then one day in my local parish where I was serving as a youth minister, Leanne appeared. I had no idea Leanne was part of my parish. She came up to me and invited me to a faith-sharing evening for supper. I accepted the invitation. I was curious, and that curiosity allowed for an invitation to come forward. And upon being invited, I was welcomed. And in that welcome, I felt like I was home. I became a part of that faith-sharing community, and they became like family to me because my family was far away. That summer, they invited me, they sponsored me to come to the Life program here in Dayton, here at the University of Dayton. That was 23 years ago this month. I stand in front of you today because of that initial invitation. I wonder what your personal encounter with the Marianists was. Take a moment to think about the first time you encountered the Marianists. What were your first thoughts? What was your impression? What was the invitation? For some of you, I'm sure meeting the Marianists may have happened at UD, or in a Marianist parish or Marianist ministry. For others like myself, it could have been a chance encounter. Whatever the case, we were inspired enough by that moment to come together today. As I reflect upon that time, I was struck by Marianists, both religious and lay, and the way they invited me into a new way of being. Hospitality, openness, and invitation to new ideas, and a humble witness and service. I remember a particular moment when I was the life director here in Dayton. And we had a significant issue that the team had to decide on. I asked Father Kip Stander to go on a walk with me. I didn't know what to decide. I didn't know what to say. And I didn't know what the outcome would be. I asked Kip for guidance. He was a Marianist. He should have the answer. Kip smiled when I asked him what we should do. And he turned to me and said this: Marg, you have a heart like Mary. Let that be your guide. Be assured of my support. And know that whatever you decide, I will be behind you. I was invited to take up the challenge and to step into leadership in a new way. Kip invited, and I responded. It begins with each one of us here today. As a recognized association of the faithful, supported by an international and North American organization, we have a strong foundation. We also belong to a family, the family of Mary. 3 branches, each playing a unique role, offering a unique gift to the church. Not as separate entities, but as a large, unified family, working to support one another of bringing Christ into the world. But are your hearts ready? Are we confident enough to do it? How do we take on the heart of Mary in a manner that inspires? It begins with opportunity for invitation and for witness. Allowing the other to transform us and in turn to be transformed. A call to embrace the other in a spirit of mutuality and vulnerability. Father Chaminade saw the need for us to be in permanent mission, providing stability for the community by each one of us taking responsibility to keep the mission alive.
So we know the mission is not ours alone. We collectively belong to something bigger. But after a couple centuries, it's only been in recent decades that the role of the laity has come full circle in the life of the Marianist family. Imagine what it could look like going forward. A lay community that gives life and is so compelling that it not only attracts new members, but some of the members want to deepen their own commitment by pursuing a religious vocation. We should think about that. We as lay Marianists have reclaimed our identity in the Marianist family, but we've done so without really articulating standards or expectations. We've taken steps to gain recognition, even by the Vatican, but we are engaged in a delicate dance with a lot to balance. We want to be inclusive and hospitable. We want to be a spectacle of saints, throwing that party where everyone is welcome. But we have a responsibility to have practices in place to fulfill our purpose and to hold one another accountable in the name of the Marianist family. MLC-NA has been in existence for over 20 years and has been evolving. We've had our growing pains as we've matured. We started out as a network. We convened and connected people and communities. But we are more than that. Creating a vision and laying a plan for the future started earnestly in 2014 with an appreciative inquiry process and strategic plan that resulted in the implementation of a new leadership model and goals around identity and formation. In 2016, we began going by the name Marianist Lay Community of North America. Community singular, not communities, not a network. And this was to acknowledge that collectively we are more than a network of individuals and communities. Even in Father Chaminade's time, his synodality grew and was subdivided into divisions or fractions. So our reality of multiple communities being part of something larger is not new. Our membership isn't in a local community, a single local community. We are part of a worldwide faith community. And this is particularly significant in a mobile society where sometimes a lay Marianist leaves his or her primary community and ends up in a location where there are no other Marianist connections. That person is still part of our community regardless of where they are. Looking at ourselves as one community also lends itself to having a common vision and mission and vocabulary, as Brother Ray suggested this morning. And MLC-NA takes on a larger role than that of convener. It reorients us as an association of the faithful. As an association of the faithful, we must be able to articulate who we are and what we are about. And we must be mission-oriented. And we can no longer ride the coattails of the vowed religious. We can't just hang around the Marianist family and call ourselves Marianist. To be something, to claim it, to identify it as it requires intention and expectations. On December 8th, 2016, MLC-NA published the document that is on your tables, A Guide to Life in the Marianist Lay Community. There are also copies out on a table in the hallway if there aren't enough at the tables, and it's also available online. It's our first edition of trying to articulate all of this, what it means to lay this foundation of what it means to be a lay Marianist. It's consistent with other international documents, one in particular that says to be a lay Marianist is to know, commit to, and live the Marianist charism. In this document, we've expanded on those ideas to offer practical and tangible examples of how we can know, commit to, and live as lay Marianists. Intentionality and commitment are paramount. The to know section speaks of the importance of formation. Many of us came into the Marianist family through a variety of connections and programs. As new people join our communities, or even as we get married, or welcome married to or welcome non-Marianists, how do those individuals get the proper formation? As a faith community, MLC-NA has begun working with the Marianist Center for Lay Formation and the North American Center for Marianist Studies on the development of initial and ongoing formation programs, particularly for those who aren't formed as part of programs in our Marianist institutions. The Commit To section provides examples of the types of commitments people make to live the Marianist charism. Some commitments are made within a community. Some are made publicly. Some are made to an employer. Some are temporary or made annually. Some are for a lifetime. The commitments are important, but what is more important for someone identifying as a lay Marianist is the notion that the commitment isn't to an employer or a community. The commitment as a lay Marianist is a commitment to a way of life. It is a commitment to something larger than ourselves and our primary communities. It is a commitment that comes with responsibility to acknowledge, participate in, and support the movement. The Live section of the document is pragmatic in nature. It identifies characteristics and activities that lay Marianists and communities might take on. In essence, it's kind of a checklist, but not doing certain things doesn't mean you're not a Marianist. It reminds us that we're people of faith, formed in the charism, who grow in our understanding of and relationship with Mary, who create and sustain communities of faith and hope, and who contribute time, talent, and treasure to the wider Marianist family to support the movement. Examples in this section range from knowing about the founders to things like praying the 3 o'clock prayer, to best practices around meetings and the frequency of community meetings, observance of Marian feast days. It encourages the practice of the system of virtues and seeking the guidance of a spiritual director or companion. It reminds us of the importance of community, especially for those who find themselves in a location where there are no other Marianists. And it includes an expectation of supporting the Marianist family, particularly MLC-NA. The guide includes the process that MLC-NA will implement to recognize new Marianist lay communities, as well as maintain ongoing relationships with all communities. I mean, really trying to keep up with that database. In a mobile society, when a new community is formed or new members join a community, we all need to remember and acknowledge that they are joining us as a larger lay community of North America.
So we have this encounter, are supported by a strong foundation of Marianists, and are called to move forward to be missionaries. What would it take for you to inspire others? As I ask that question, I can hear my own resistance. Me? How? Where would I find them? People I know hardly have time to come for dinner, let alone build community. I guess the question I've come to ponder is, how can my way of being inspire others to bring Christ into the world? In 2014, this question became very real to me. I was community leader of a L'Arche community in Stratford. L'Arche is a faith-based organization that lives and works with people with developmental disabilities. It had been a hard year. We had 6 members with disabilities die unexpectedly in a period of 8 months. Every 6 weeks, I was either in hospital, in palliative care, or celebrating a person's life. My dad had a stroke, and my brother-in-law died at the age of 43. Death and sadness were affecting both my personal and communal life. I had a 4-month sabbatical scheduled, and I crawled on my knees to get there. I was emotionally and physically exhausted. About 2 weeks into my sabbatical, coming home from a weekend with my family and my sister and nephew from Niagara Falls, we came upon a car accident. As I slowed down, I rolled down the window and asked if they needed help. The man looked at me and said, "I can use whatever I can get." I said, "Okay, I'll pull over," and my husband and I ran to the scene. We reported to the only person with first aid training on the scene. He told me that Mom was trapped and asked if I could take care of the children. I didn't see any children until I turned around. As I turned around, there were 5 children with massive head injuries. I saw people on the sidelines, confused and not sure what to do. I thought quickly and moved into action. After all, I had been trained for many years in first aid and knew exactly what to do. I taught first aid to each of them and got each of the children, one adult, to listen and be with them and talk them down. I took the child that was most seriously injured. Her name was Molly. Molly was 7 years old, like my daughter. She was scared, and so was I. Molly asked me 3 questions. Am I going to die? Is my mommy going to die? Is this a nightmare? I answered her questions as best I could, and I moved on. There were many people to help, and that is what I did. The emergency responders arrived. The 2 air ambulances arrived, and my job was nearly finished. As Molly was taken and flown to the nearest hospital, I held the youngest boy in my arms, waiting for him to be taken to the hospital. I could not hear myself think because of the noise and the chaos that surrounded. At that moment, I became radically aware. As I held the little boy in my arms, I looked beside me and saw the woman who caused the accident. I suddenly became aware that this just wasn't any accident, but an accident caused by a drunk driver. She was a mother. I was a mother. And the mother that was trapped was a mother. 3 women the same age, 3 mothers the same age, all affected significantly by what had just happened. In fact, our lives were changed forever. So it hit me. I could feel the panic rise up inside me. and all I could do was pray. The only thing I could remember was the Hail Mary. And I couldn't even remember all of it. But I remember inviting Mary to come and be beside me, and to come and be beside all of us, as we did the best we could. For I could not handle this alone. Once the little boy was attended to and left the scene, I left in silence. My husband and I didn't speak. When we got in the van with my sister and nephew and our children, we did not speak, and we drove home. That night after the kids were in bed, I was up all night. I went into shock. The two images I could not get out of my head were the face of the drunk driver and Molly's 3 questions. These words and images haunted me for months as I suffered from PTSD. Throughout my recovery, I prayed and discerned the meaning of the last 8 months. At first, I was really angry. I was angry at God. I'd never been angry at God before. How dare you do this to me? I was a faithful servant. I did what I was asked. You know I was exhausted. And then to put little children in front of me who were suffering. How dare you? You know I can't handle this. I was also confused. Why was I not angry with the drunk driver, but just overwhelmed with a deep sense of sadness and grief? During one of my sessions with the trauma worker, I spoke about this. He was a man of faith. He stopped me at the point when I said, "You know, God, I can't handle this." He looked me in the eyes and said, "What if God gave it to you because you could handle it?" Once again, I had no words. I broke down and cried. And this started the period of my recovery. Through prayer and discernment, I heard very clearly a new call and direction for my life. This was confirmed when in a coffee shop about 2 weeks after I had my session with the counselor, I noticed a firefighter from the accident. We had looked at each other 3 times in the accident and said nothing. His eyes is what I remembered. I ran up to him and asked if he was if he was at the Ember Road accident. He said he was, and you were the lady in the pink shirt. I said, I am. He said, I don't know if you're a believer. I nodded. Because God had a very special plan for you that day, and you fulfilled it. I was overwhelmed. I recognized again in that moment my path was beginning to change. I was transformed. I made a decision that day to leave my role as community leader and to begin working with people and organizations in trauma and conflict. I felt called to come alongside them like Mary did in so many situations. I was willing to say yes to the unknown, which became transformative. To do ordinary things in extraordinary ways. As Ray said this morning, to voluntarily choose to be displaced, to be radically uncomfortable. My mission as a lay Marianist affiliate is to help people and organizations discover the spark that illuminates their life. An inspired vision coming out of chaos. What is the chaos that surrounds your life? What are you being called into? And how can you be an inspiration in it? How can you welcome the stranger and the unknown into your life?
As we think about the unknown, as we think about the stranger, as we think about everything that we've heard this weekend and what Pope Francis tells us about encounter and the other, we think about our own Marianist story. And I know a lot of you, probably most of us, are familiar with the setting of the Marianist table. We do not have a table up here tonight, but we would like to retell that story in different voices. And so what I'd like you to do is close your eyes so that you can enter into this reflection. And I'd invite you in particular to reflect on the words of the other. So many times people ask, what is unique about community? Right now, we're going to try to answer those questions by relating to the everyday experience of setting the table for a meal. Each of the items that will go onto the table, in fact, the table itself, will have some special meaning. As with most images, this table setting may make you remember something special or may mean something special to you. But what about those who are looking for community? What could this look like from the other perspective?
This is my first time here. My friend Matt invited me. I'm only here to check it out. It sounds interesting, but I'm not quite sure it's for me. They begin by having us stand around a table. One of the members begins.
At a round table, there is no head of the table. We are all honored and special at the table. No one is given a special place because of their title or responsibility. All the gifts brought by the people at the table are important. In community, we acknowledge, celebrate, and honor the differences among us, but we don't give certain privileges to anyone because of the role they have in community. All are equal.
I ask myself, can I fit here? Will my gifts be welcomed? I stand back and take notice. I'll wait for a moment and see what happens. I see flowers brought to the table.
Flowers are warm and welcoming. The different flowers represent our Marianist charism, especially the hospitality for which we are known. Making someone feel welcomed and wanted is important to us.
They introduce themselves to me and ask if I want a drink. This made me feel at ease. I'm curious. Hospitality? What does that mean? I wonder how long this will last. Candles are then brought to the table. Before they light the candles, they say,
Lighting candles before a special meal is an ancient tradition. The candles help us to remember to set aside everyday tasks and chores and allow time and space for the holy, the sacred. It is time for us to take a step back and see where God is evident in our lives. This is very much part of our tradition.
I haven't seen this before. Tradition's not what I grew up with. I'm beginning to feel myself drawn into the table.
People come to the table to be nourished in body and in spirit. At the table, we will need many items to make sure everyone can enter fully into community. Knives, forks, and spoons are essential for our meal. The utensils represent the people in the family who, by their talent or education, bring very concrete skills to our family. Maybe the spoon reminds us of those who can lead prayer. The forks might represent those whom we rely on to help with conflict resolution.
My family never really sat around a table, let alone set a table. I wonder if I belong here.
You are probably wondering why napkins might be needed. Sometimes a mess will be made, and we need something or someone to help clean it up. Sometimes we bite off more than we can chew. Spills are going to happen. Sometimes tears are going to fall. No matter what, the spill needs someone to be the napkin to wipe it away.
I don't know what to say. I've not got it all together, and it sounds like they don't either. I'm rather speechless. I have no words to describe what I'm feeling at this moment.
The empty plates represent those people who come to our community. They anticipate that good things will be served. There are times, though, when we have seen someone come to the community carrying a full plate with no room to receive. Sometimes we find a plate among us that is cracked or broken. It won't be able to hold food until it is put back together. And there are painful times when what we serve does not fill the hunger, so the person leaves.
I have a choice to stay or to leave. If I stay, I wonder what I can bring to this table.
As each glass is filled, we think about the mystery of water. Water is essential to our survival. When a new person comes to our community, we are asked to trust that even though they may be somewhat of a mystery to us at first, we will be refreshed as a community by their presence.
Wow, it sounds like they've made a place for someone like me. Is it always like this? Could this be intentional? This is strange, yet somehow comforting.
In some cultures, to have bread is to have a full meal. We believe we meet Christ in one another. We feed one another with Christ's life. Some days we eat bread in joy. Some days we eat in sorrow. And for some final touches, a carafe of wine to symbolize how we love to celebrate together. We are the living fruit of the vine, Jesus. We are called to share our stories and celebrate who we are. Through our stories, we are educated, inspired, and reconciled. We hope that others will be attracted to us.
I'm drawn in and challenged. I feel welcome at the table. I think in time, I may too have a story to share. I walk away and ponder this moment.
We want to stay a little longer, but we must go out. Other tables must be set. We build community, not just for ourselves, but for the whole world. This weekend, we've been reminded by our speakers, and we know from Catholic and Marianist tradition that we must go out into the world. We know that the essential is the interior, but it must propel us outward. But I would add that if we are truly going to be a movement, if we are going to be a spectacle of saints, If we are going to spread a contagion of good, or be a community who can say that day by day the Lord added to their numbers those who were being saved, we must invite people to join us. It's not the responsibility only of the brothers and sisters, it's all of our responsibility. The brothers and sisters have opened their homes to us. We need to open our homes to others. One of my most significant observations of our community life is the amount of navel-gazing we do. As we focus on our own spirituality, personal growth, relationships within community, and the way we live our lives, it's easy to say, what am I getting out of community? We might even ask, what's my community getting out of MLC-NA? Or, we were formed, now what are we supposed to do? Or how are we meeting each other's needs as community? But we also need to ask, what are we doing for the world? Sister Franca Zonta, Superior General of the Marianist Sisters, wrote in Circular number 9, a family does not close in on itself. It does not exist for itself. To be the charismatic family hoped for by our founders, we must listen to the Marianist family to understand the world, and listen to the world to know the Marianist family. My biggest hope for lay Marianists is that we can look beyond ourselves, beyond our communities, to truly be a movement. We like our intimate community settings. They're familiar, and we're comfortable. But we're called to break out of our comfort zones, to see Christ in new and unfamiliar ways. We need to be looking outward, not inward. We need to figure out how to welcome new people into our communities. We need to figure out how to start new communities. We need to figure out how to be of service to the Marianist family, the church, and the world, particularly the poor and marginalized. We have a model of being church that is a gift. We have something people yearn for. We need to share that gift and be church for others. We need to be the church in the modern world. One of the most disheartening things that I've heard in the last year was from somebody who contacted me expressing her desire to join a lay community, and having contacted and been in touch with a couple communities, was given this response. By one, she was told by its members that she couldn't be one of them because she didn't go through the formation that they went through. And by another community, that they weren't accepting new members. I've heard similar stories from people in our Marianist institutions who are seeking community but aren't hand-selected to be included in Marianist activities. This is not what Father Chaminade desired. It's the opposite of what Father Chaminade wanted. Being in a Marianist community isn't membership in a club or a clique. If we want to be inclusive, we must intentionally and actively extend invitations and be welcoming. Our mission includes getting others to join in the mission. We have a responsibility to be regenerative. It's our responsibility to grow the Marianist family. The invitation must come from us. If we're going to commit to the Marianist movement, the way we live the charism must create opportunities for people to join us. And where are they going to come from? I just gave you some examples. Sometimes we have a built-in audience. We need to be using our existing Marianist ministries, our high schools, universities, and parishes. There could be a specific effort to expand or build communities of faculty, staff, parents, or alumni of our schools. Are there MEAs at our institutions who might actually want to be a lay Marianist? A Marianist parish, or any of our individual parishes, could be a community of communities. We can be the spark that makes that happen. Individual communities or local family councils could be present or even set up displays at tables during Marianist heritage activities. People need to know about us. Communities could have a night where they gather and everyone brings at least one new person. I would actually put that out there as a challenge to all of us. Between now and our next assembly, we need to be growing our communities or creating new communities. That night could be a prayer night, a picnic, a social, or any combination of those. Similarly, if they're not already engaged, we should be including our spouses and children and friends. Our communities could host a prayer or discussion open to anyone and promote it. My community has had gatherings where we've welcomed other communities from around town and done things together. We hosted a night here on campus that was open to other people, where we brought in guest speakers to talk about immigration. The Cleveland Marianist Lay community has a Facebook page. When they have their meetings or programs, they open it to anybody. They welcome people to participate in their conversations or to at least ask more information to learn about them. Many religious communities and dioceses have come and see vocation programs. What if we promoted our own communities in our own parish bulletins? Not just Marianist parish bulletins, but any of our bulletins. In my parish bulletin, I see all the time Legion of Mary, Knights of Columbus, St. Vincent de Paul, Third Order Franciscans. I've thought about putting something in. I need to take action. I need to walk the talk. That kind of an activity can be in a parish setting. It could be in somebody's home. What I'm trying to do is just get the brain to be thinking about some ideas of ways that we can actually be reaching out. What would it be like to actually start a new small Christian community? It may not even identify as a Marianist community at first, or maybe not at all. But we can build community in the church, and we do that because of our Marianist vocation. We could invite others to participate in service projects with us, or we could create new ministries. You know, across the country, we're all pretty autonomous. The Marianist Lake community of North America is all of us, and we all need to take initiative, like those that started the Mission to Mary Farm, or the prison ministry, or the state community hosting an intergenerational retreat. We all have different things that we can do for the family and for the church and world. As we start to grow, mature, and build capacity as a faith community, as an association of the faithful, we will give witness to and begin to see the transformation that many have spoken about this weekend. People long for connectivity, and we can provide that. If we can get out of the what's in it for me mindset and start asking ourselves, how am I, or how is our community impacting the church and world, we will not only realize our own potential, but we will begin to better see and appreciate the potential in others. Our personal relationships might start to look different. The way our communities gather to pray, socialize, learn about issues, and work together towards the common good will start to look different. What if we started to be too big to meet in someone's home? That can be uncomfortable. But if we're too comfortable, we're doing something wrong. If new people do come, the natural question next is what to do with and for them, especially if they have no previous Marianist background. We must have processes to welcome, gather, and form them. Can there be a common expectation, wherever you are across the country, that there's some framework that we can work within, even if we adapt it at the local level? We, as the Marianist lay community of North America, have to set that standard. What is the role of MLC-NA in delivering content? or identifying collaborators such as NACMS or the Center for Lay Formation to help deliver content? What is the role of an individual community in being companions to new members, welcoming new members, assisting with formation, or even providing the formation? These are all questions that we need to answer. The Leadership Council is working to address these questions, but we are all part of the Marianas lay community of North America, and it's not the Leadership Council's responsibility solely to do all the recruitment or all of the work. We can all individually or as communities make a commitment to reach out to others. As we live our passion and commitment, as we share our vision, activities, and stories, and what we've learned, we'll realize that we can replicate it elsewhere, and we will grow a movement. Thank you.
We'd like to now invite you into a time of reflection around your tables. There's 2 questions. They're pretty simple questions, but just to open this time. What struck you personally about the presentation? And what will you bring back to your communities? So we're going to give you time to about 5 minutes or so to share around your table. And then we're going to invite you to share whatever reflections you have or any personal things that you want to commit to up here. Okay, so about 5 minutes.
So Mike and I are involved in formation here at the university, and some of our wonderful people are here, which is great. Thank you for coming. But I guess one of something that has been in the front of my brain and haunting me is, so when they go forward out of this institution, you know, the idea of ongoing formation. So we've seen the Ahava community, and lots of them have been here. You know, they have chosen a mission of helping to support and form the new communities coming out of the university. I guess it's kind of a challenge and a question of how do we, Mike and I, in the rector's office, work together with MLC-NA to kind of, I'm sorry for this image, hand them over to you for you know, their further development.
I think that's a legitimate question, and I think something that we all need to enter into dialogue going forward. I mean, not just here, but at all of our institutions and all of our programs, that there is a handoff. So whether it's at the Marianas Family Council level or maybe some kind of formation task force or advisory group that could be put together, there does need to be a handoff. Yes.
We were struck by your thought about navel gazing, and I think that as our brief conversation we had, we recognized the fact that once again we're called to jump out of the comfort zone, and I think in the St. Louis area through our family council we have begun to strive to invite more and more people. We have a Lenten program started by one of our lay Marianas members and her group. But at the same time, I'm reminded of what all of us who have ever been in an administration of anything are remembered. If you are static, you can't be static. You can either grow or you're going to decline. And I think that's what you're calling us to, is kind of drop the contemplative part and get on with the action part in inviting new people in and in doing new things and being very welcoming. Another issue that was brought up that may be of troubling some other folks or have had it come up is that we were wondering, the question was raised about how do we have our other Christian friends join lay Marianist groups are be welcomed in. Brian said that he recalls Carol Ramey talking about a big boat, and that you just make, have more cabins in your boat, but everybody's on the boat. Was that fair? So I mean,
Yeah.
so I personally had that happen with our lay Marianist group, and the person decided not to get on the boat, but we said fine. So I don't know,
So
how that's come up. That may need some clarification from your level.
right, and I think that as lay Marianists, we've chosen a vocation, and we're living that vocation in the context of community. That community can be bigger. Not every So I would envision that somebody could be part of an MLC without necessarily being a lay Marianist. And the document sort of alludes to that too, that within any community, we're all at different stages. So whether it's through our baptismal call or any other kind of commitment that we might make, we have to recognize that we're all at different stages, and we're all in need of ongoing formation in some form or another. To your first point, I think we do need to, or get off the pot, but I think there is a role, kind of even in Marg's story, I think there's a role for prayer and discernment, but it needs to lead to the action.
Yeah, I think it's instead of seeing them as polar opposites, can we do both and? Can we do contemplation and action together, right? Instead of them being one or the other. And I would say that in my work is ecumenical. And in fact, I bring the 5 silences to my team of consultants. As a contemplative who works out in the world, I work with other contemplatives of other denominations. And for them, the 5 silences has been profound. But that's something I could bring to the table. And it's something they could integrate that's not just for Catholics, right? So it's a way of being together in the world.
Father Ted.
Listening to you both is very interesting because I've been on a team with you for 3 years now. Has it been 3 years? And on the leadership team. And to be with you both on that team is like hearing your talents and your gifts frequently. Like Matt is great at taking these documents and working them out and perfecting them. And to listen to Marg, when we have discussions, you sort of bring in this discernment dynamic all the time. So they have tremendous talents. And then I was thinking of when I was in Chester, Pennsylvania, and we had this wonderful lay community, and there was especially 3 couples in it who were been there they were involved for years, but they were people that really listened, the Dunleavys and Rapagnanis, and I can't remember the other name of the other couple. But they had this gift of coming together, and they were very faithful. They came together every 2, I think, weeks. I remember we went through all the system of virtues with them. And they raised their children. And then they started the Marianist Lay Center there with that old mansion we had. And that did all kinds of wonderful work in Delaware County there for years. But why I say all that is because, and today was wonderful to listen to Father Rotan speak about Chaminad's letters. That Chaminad's method was constantly this asceticism of the virtues brings us to see what divine providence is leading us to. And I think that with the way we attract new members or we grow in the community is discovering through our asceticism, group asceticism or individual asceticism, what are the gifts we have. And then how do we use those gifts for the needs? So it's like, I was thinking I used to play racquetball with Brother Joe here, and to play racquetball with him was tough. He was driven to win. absolutely driven to win. So the asceticism was tough, you know, playing with him to find out what are my gifts in racquetball. Could I ever beat him at racquetball? So the point I'm trying to make is it's like this newness is going to come from our recognition of our gifts and how divine providence is leading us to do it. It's like a really discernment process. Yeah.
And sometimes it's also okay to move forward without permission. Sometimes we're just waiting on permission to do things, and sometimes, you know, everybody else gets on board later.
We'll have time for one more. I see Maureen's hand in the back here.
I'm going to start with just my mom voice. If I need the mic, I will. I think, at least, and I'm just speaking for me, the forming part, the gathering part, and the forming part, for me has always seemed to be the easier part. The going out and doing, again, I speak for myself and our little, relatively very new community. We can get caught in this riptide of what are we going to do, where are we going to do it, there's so much work to be done, we're too small, it's too big. And so you never start. And one of the things that's driven me, I started sort of with the Marianist Lake Formation Initiative, and immediately had the question, what are we going to do? You know, we got to do something. And so I think the challenge, at least for me, has always been just find a first step. Just find a first step. Now, the scary part of that is God only knows where that is going to take you. Jay was talking about the Lenten program that we do at St. Mary's. The first year we had this really cool program, Walking Through Lent with Mary. And we had Brian Levy and and Father Al and Father Marty and Mary Kay Fitzpatrick, a bunch of local St. Louis Marianists. And it was awesome. And sometimes we had 5 people and sometimes we had 20. And Pat Krasinski told me that Jesus said, feed my sheep, not count them. And fast forward 4 years later, I'm thinking, so what will we do this year for Lent? And I get this voice in my head, and I was like, no, that can't be right. And I went and talked to some people, and I said, I think maybe this year we're supposed to do this program on walking with Mary toward racial justice in St. Louis. Well, that was big and scary, and so I thought, well, if it's going to be this topic, we'll have to get the administration approval, and they'll probably say no because it's big and scary. And President high school said, that's exactly what we're doing as a theme for our preschool retreat and going to carry through the whole year. And I was like, great. And so we did this. We did this walking with Mary for racial justice.
And that speaks to the signs of the times. I'm sorry to cut you off where I'm mindful of the time, but it's that first step. It's the being aware and asking the question and having those conversations. And it doesn't need to be big right away. Yeah, say yes and just let things evolve.
Awesome. Well, thank you to Matt and Marg for their witness.